Most rivers carry the same things: water, sand, gravel, pebbles polished smooth by countless seasons. Stand beside almost any river on Earth, and it feels ordinary. The current flows, the stones tumble, the landscape quietly changes. But every so often, a river does something remarkable, hidden among thousands of ordinary pebbles. It carries sapphires, not one, not two, sometimes enough to supply miners for generations. Travel just a few kilometers away, another river flows through the same valley. It looks almost identical, the same water, the same gravel, the same bends, yet not a single sapphire can be found. This raises one of geology's most fascinating questions. Why? Why does one river become a sapphire river, while another, just beyond the next ridge, never produces a single crystal? At first, the answer seems obvious. Perhaps the Sapphire River simply flows through richer mountains. But nature is rarely that simple. Some rivers cross sapphire-bearing mountains and still contain almost nothing. Others continue producing gemstones, long after the original mountain has almost disappeared. The mystery is bigger than the river itself, because rivers do not choose what they carry. They inherit it, they sort it, they hide it, and sometimes they quietly concentrate enough gemstones to create one of Earth's greatest natural treasure hunts. The remarkable part, the answer isn't written in the water. It's written in the landscape surrounding it, in ancient mountains, forgotten river channels, floods that happened thousands of years ago, and tiny differences in the movement of gravel that most people never notice. To understand why some rivers are full of sapphires, you must stop looking at the gemstones and start listening to the river, because every bend, every gravel bar, every exposed layer of bedrock is trying to tell the same story. The question is, can you read it? Our journey begins with two rivers, almost identical, yet separated by one extraordinary secret. Imagine standing between two rivers. Both begin high in the mountains. Both carry clear, cold water. Both flood during the rainy season. Both have gravel bars that sparkle in the sunlight. If you scooped up a handful of stones from each, they would appear almost identical. Quartz, granite, basalt, rounded pebbles shaped by years of flowing water. Yet hidden among those stones, one river contains sapphires, the other does not. That difference has puzzled explorers for centuries. Early prospectors often believed gemstone rivers were simply lucky places. Dig long enough, eventually something valuable would appear. Experience proved otherwise. Some rivers rewarded generations of miners. Others consumed years of hard work without producing a single worthwhile crystal. Luck wasn't the answer. Geology was. Successful gemstone prospectors eventually learned something remarkable. They stopped asking, "Where are the sapphires?" Instead, they began asking, what kind of river could keep them? That single question changed everything, because finding sapphires is rarely about discovering the crystal. It is about discovering the river that refuses to let it escape. Every river is constantly making choices, not conscious choices, physical ones. Every second, the current decides which particles continue downstream and which remain behind. Light sand travels easily. Small gravel follows. Larger stones move only during powerful floods. But sapphires are different. They are far heavier than most of the rocks surrounding them. The river treats them differently. When the current weakens, the lighter material continues its journey. The sapphire begins slowing down. Then, it stops. The crystal has found its first resting place. This happens again and again, across thousands of years. Each flood rearranges the riverbed. Each season moves ordinary gravel farther downstream. The sapphires travel too, but much more slowly, almost reluctantly. The river isn't simply carrying gemstones. It is sorting them. Patiently, relentlessly, one flood at a time, and over centuries. That sorting creates something extraordinary. Not a random collection of sapphires, but natural concentration zones, places where heavy gemstones quietly gather while lighter material continues downstream. To someone standing on the bank, the river appears unchanged. Beneath the surface, it has been separating minerals with astonishing precision, long before the first human ever searched its gravel. That is the first secret of every sapphire river. It isn't richer because it created sapphires. It is richer because it learned how to keep them. Every river is a collector, but it is also a thief. Every second, it steals mountains, not all at once, grain by grain, pebble by pebble. Storm after storm, a mountain slowly disappears into the current. Most of what the river carries never stays. Sand continues downstream. Silt eventually reaches lakes. Clay drifts toward the sea. Even large cobbles move during powerful floods. The river is always cleaning itself, always rearranging its own floor. Yet every river has moments where its incredible strength suddenly weakens. These moments are almost invisible. A slight bend, a wider channel, a shallow pool, a large boulder interrupting the current, a crack in solid bedrock. To us, they appear ordinary. To a sapphire, they change everything. Because a sapphire does not move through a river the way sand does. It is denser, heavier, more difficult to carry. As the current begins losing energy, the sapphire feels it first. The crystal slows. The gravel continues. The sand keeps moving. Then, almost without warning, the sapphire settles onto the riverbed. Nature has made its first decision, but the journey isn't over. Months later, a flood arrives. The calm river transforms into a wall of moving water. Entire trees drift downstream. Huge boulders begin rolling along the bottom. Gravel that remained untouched for years suddenly comes alive. For a brief moment, the sapphire moves again. Not far, just enough. The flood weakens, the current slows, and once again, the sapphire settles. Perhaps only a few meters away, perhaps inside a crack, perhaps beneath another layer of gravel. This happens hundreds, sometimes thousands of times. Each flood edits the river. Each season rewrites the riverbed. The sapphire continues its journey, not in one dramatic event, but through countless tiny movements spread across centuries. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The river finds a place where the sapphire becomes difficult to move again, a natural trap. Prospectors have many names for these places: pay pockets, heavy mineral traps, concentration zones, but the river has been creating them long before humans gave them names. Imagine pouring a handful of marbles across a wooden floor. Most roll away. Now place a small groove in the wood. One marble stops, then another, then another. Soon, the groove begins collecting marbles while the rest continue rolling past. A river behaves much the same way. Its grooves are not carved into wood. They are carved into earth itself. Bedrock cracks, natural depressions, deep pools, gravel bars hidden beneath the current. Every one becomes a place where heavy minerals quietly gather. Not only sapphires, gold, garnets, zircons, magnetite, even tiny diamonds in certain parts of the world. Different minerals, the same process. Gravity quietly sorting the river. Perhaps that is the greatest misunderstanding about gemstone rivers. People imagine treasure scattered everywhere. Nature almost never works that way. A river may carry sapphires for kilometers, yet only a handful of locations contain significant concentrations. Move 3 meters upstream, nothing. Move 3 meters downstream, nothing. But inside one narrow crack, dozens of sapphires may have quietly collected over hundreds of years. The river remembers places. It returns to them with every flood, again and again and again. Each flood delivers another crystal. Each flood removes lighter gravel, slowly, patiently. The concentration grows. To someone walking along the bank, the river looks random. To a geologist, it is astonishingly organized. Every bend follows physics. Every gravel bar follows energy. Every sapphire follows gravity. Nothing here is accidental. The river has been sorting its treasure long before the first prospector ever filled a pan. But another mystery remains. If rivers are so good at concentrating sapphires, why don't all rivers become sapphire rivers? Why do thousands of rivers sort gravel for millions of years, yet never produce a single gemstone? The answer lies not inside the river, but far beyond it, in the landscape that feeds it. Because before a river can hide sapphires, the earth must first decide whether to give the river any at all. A river can only carry what the landscape gives it. That simple truth explains why thousands of rivers never produce a single sapphire. Because the river is not the creator, it is the messenger. Imagine two rivers beginning only a few kilometers apart. They receive the same rainfall. They experience the same seasons. They flow with nearly the same speed. Yet one becomes famous among gemstone prospectors. The other remains ordinary. The difference was decided millions of years before either river existed. High above the valleys, the mountains hold the answer. Most mountains contain no sapphires at all. They may be rich in quartz, granite, limestone, or volcanic rock. Beautiful landscapes, but not sapphire landscapes. When rain begins breaking those mountains apart, the river receives ordinary gravel, nothing more. No amount of patience, no amount of prospecting can change that. A river cannot deliver gemstones that were never there. That is why experienced prospectors rarely begin their search beside the river. They begin by studying the mountains, because every sapphire river has a parent, a source, somewhere upstream, hidden among cliffs, ancient rock, or weathered hillsides. The original sapphire-bearing rocks still exist. Perhaps only a few scattered outcrops remain. Perhaps they disappeared long ago. But at some point in geological history, they fed the river. Then another surprise appears. Sometimes, the mountain that supplied the sapphires no longer exists. At least, not in the way we imagine. Over millions of years, entire mountain ranges slowly disappear. Rain removes them. Frost breaks them apart. Rivers carry them away. The landscape changes so gradually that every generation believes it has always looked the same. Yet geology tells another story. Today's peaceful valley may once have been surrounded by towering peaks. Those vanished mountains released millions of tons of rock into nearby rivers. Most of that rock became ordinary sand. Some became gravel, and a tiny fraction, the sapphires, continued their journey. The mountain disappeared. The gemstones remained. This explains one of the greatest mysteries in gemstone prospecting. Sometimes the richest sapphire river is found beside mountains that contain almost no sapphires today. The source has already been eroded away. The river remembers, even when the mountain does not. Now another mystery quietly appears. Not every sapphire reaches the modern river. In fact, some of the richest sapphire deposits are nowhere near flowing water. They lie beneath forests, grasslands, farmland, even deserts. How is that possible? Because rivers move. A river is not fixed forever. Over thousands of years, floods carve new channels. Old bends are abandoned. Entire rivers change direction. What was once the main channel becomes dry ground. Geologists call these ancient channels paleochannels. To most people, they look like ordinary fields. To a prospector, they are rivers frozen in time. Many ancient channels still contain the heavy minerals they collected thousands, or even millions of years ago. The water is gone. The sapphires remain. That is why some of the world's richest sapphire deposits are mined far from today's rivers. Miners are not following the present landscape. They are following a forgotten one, a river that no longer exists. Experienced prospectors understand this better than anyone. They never ask only, "Where is the river?" They ask, "Where was the river?" Because yesterday's river may be far richer than today's. And that changes the entire search. Suddenly, a hillside becomes interesting. A flat terrace becomes valuable. An isolated patch of gravel high above the valley floor becomes evidence. Evidence that a powerful river once flowed there, carrying sapphires toward a destination it never reached. The landscape begins revealing another layer of its story. Not all rivers are visible. Some exist only in the rocks beneath your feet. And once you learn to recognize their ancient pathways, you begin to see the world differently. The hills stop being hills. The terraces stop being terraces. They become chapters of an ancient river system, still guarding the gemstones it collected long ago. But there is one final mystery. Even in a sapphire river, even in the perfect gravel, even above ancient channels, most people still walk away empty-handed. Why? Because finding sapphires has never been about luck. It has always been about reading the evidence the river quietly leaves behind. And that may be the greatest skill of all. A sapphire river does not advertise its treasure. It whispers. Every bend, every gravel bar, every exposed rock is part of a language the river has been speaking for thousands of years. Most people never notice. They see flowing water, a beautiful landscape, perhaps a pleasant place to fish. A prospector sees something entirely different. The river has become a map. The first clue often appears where the current begins to slow. Fast water is powerful. It carries almost everything. Sand, pebbles, even large cobbles during seasonal floods. But when the current loses energy, the rules begin to change. The heaviest materials are the first to stop. Not because they choose to, because gravity finally wins. That is why experienced sapphire prospectors rarely begin in the middle of rushing water. Instead, they search for places where the river hesitates, the inside of a bend, a gravel bar formed after countless floods, the quiet water behind a massive boulder, a narrow section where the river suddenly widens. Each location tells the same story. The current was once strong enough to carry the sapphire. Then it wasn't. But perhaps the greatest sapphire trap cannot be seen at all. It lies beneath the gravel. Bedrock. To most people, bedrock marks the end of digging. To a sapphire, it marks the beginning of hiding. A smooth bedrock surface rarely keeps gemstones for long. Powerful floods can still move them, but nature rarely leaves bedrock perfectly smooth. It cracks, it fractures, it develops tiny pockets and grooves. Each becomes a natural vault. When a sapphire falls into one of these hidden spaces, escaping becomes remarkably difficult. Flood after flood, the river continues washing across the surface. Sand disappears, gravel shifts, lighter stones move away, the sapphire remains. Another sapphire arrives, then another. Over hundreds of years, a single crack may quietly collect dozens of gemstones. The river has created its own hidden treasure chest, without intention, without design, simply by obeying the laws of physics. That explains why successful prospectors move so carefully. They are not searching randomly. They are searching for the river's memory. Every crack, every depression, every ancient pocket remembers where heavy minerals once stopped moving. The river never forgets. It simply waits for someone patient enough to understand.